Hello, everybody. Welcome back to SureFire Live. I'm your host, Mark Stoner, and thanks for joining me again on Chimney World Tuesday, where we are going to have a conversation tonight. And I'm excited about my two guests. I know one of them a little bit from a networking group, Kristen Shields, and meeting Liz Tipton, her partner, for the first time tonight. They are construction law attorneys, and it's over the years being in business, I've had some run-ins with legal situations, with customers, with contractors, with situations, and I'm excited to hear what they have to tell us tonight, because a lot of times we get our butt kicked and then we learn the lesson, and then now all of a sudden we're knowledgeable instead of trying to be, on the front side of it. And that's one of our topics tonight with them. Before I bring them on, I wanted to say that thank you for everyone that is supporting the Sweep Away Cancer Rally. It's coming up this weekend. We're super excited. We're pretty much full on the people that are coming. We're going to have a huge crowd there. And but we have some really cool T-shirts that were made. And if you want to support Sweep Away Cancer after the rally, those T-shirts are going to be for sale. And thank you, Chad Murray. I think he orders 50 shirts. So thank you for doing that already. We got a Cody Whitworth. Cody Whitwood signed right in, looking good. Mark, sounds like another great episode. Thank you for joining us. And guys, this is a conversation, so let's go back and forth. These ladies are graciously given us their time and tons of knowledge, and so please use the time wisely. And without further ado, I'm going to bring them on. So welcome, Liz and Kristen.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Hey, so thanks. Great. Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. So let's just get a little background on you guys. Why are you construction lawyers, and why are you, and you guys just recently came from different backgrounds and formed a new company. So tell us about that.
Well, I'll kick us off. I'm Liz Tipping, and I've been practicing law in Nashville for 18 years, did a lot of litigation work with a firm, and then I moved over to a construction law firm. And I hadn't known it before, I hadn't realized it, but contractors, folks who work in construction, you guys are a lot of fun. And I love working with you. So, so when I went out on my own, having gotten to know some great clients, great people, I created Counterpoint Legal, and there was no way I wanted to leave the world of construction law behind. And I'll let Kristen jump in with hers.
Yeah, so I'm Kristen Shields, and Liz and I are partners at Counterpoint Legal, and majority of what I do is construction law, helping contractors with all types of situations, which we'll talk more about. Definitely have some war stories we've gained over the years that are juicy tidbits and FYIs to look out for. But my spouse is a contractor, so it's live, eat, breathe, morning, night, breakfast table conversation, dinner table conversation, being aware of what's in the supply chain, what happened today with a customer. I mean, the full gamut. And so I have a litigation background. I started practicing in Alabama many moons ago, and then moved to Tennessee, and had the pleasure of meeting Liz. And we worked together previously, and then recently now work together at Counterpoint Legal, working the same magic that we always have, and haven't skipped a beat. So we love that we can continue to help contractors and equip you guys with, the tools in your toolbox, not the typical ones, but the ones that really can help protect you at the end of the day. And that's what we're passionate about. And that's what we get up in the morning to do.
Well, thank you for getting up in the morning and helping us, because we as contractors need a lot of help. We're really good. We're really good experts at doing our thing. We're a lot of times not great experts at forecasting or knowing what's out there ready to bite us. And I just want to jump into your first topic, which was which let me find it right here. I have it at the top of the screen, which was proactive versus reactive. I am one of the worst people at proactive versus reactive. I love reactive. I live in reactive. I've gotten better at proactive as I've gotten a little more wise, but a lot of us are that way. So tell me what you mean by this topic, and let's just talk about this.
Sure. So I'll start with an everyday situation, especially now that Alabama and Tennessee summers and Oklahoma summers are here. It's hot out. And what's the number one thing that you can do to prevent a situation of dehydration when it's 89, 95 degrees outside? You're on a roof, you're looking in a chimney, you're at a job site. It's hydrate, right? So hydrating is the best thing you can do to be proactive in your job, right? You got the skill sets, but you got to conquer the day and survive the day to wake up and do it again the next day. Right. And so, what can you do to prepare? Well, you might load your truck up with a cooler in the morning, drink the night before, drink a Gatorade that morning, don't have as much caffeine, have a little salt, pack some pickle popsicles. If you don't know what they are, there are pickle juice popsicles that you can literally throw back in the middle of the day, and it'll help you survive the day.
That's an Alabama thing.
Listen, but if they work and they, then so be it. You just chug it and move on. But, that's such an easy, everyday, common sense example of how you can be proactive, right? Proactive so that you don't get dehydrated. And then on the tail end, the reactive side is, man, you've come home from sweating all day. You are dehydrated. You've got a heat headache. My spouse came home with one about 10 minutes ago. So I know these things. We're dealing with it actively. It happens, right? Even when you are proactive, sometimes things happen. But you get a heat headache, and then you're taking Tylenol, and you feel bad going into the next day because you haven't really recovered from losing so much water the previous day. So then you're triaging that situation. You're trying to feel better. You're trying to fix it. And so there's so much value in hydrating on the front end instead of reacting and triaging on the back end. And so that's what we love to do is help you hydrate yourselves, your businesses on the front end, so that you're not always in this cleanup triage, bottom of the ninth kind of feeling. And so we do that in a number of really easy, practical ways. The easiest thing is, having some type of short form contract that you use in your business. It can be super simple. People hear contract and they think, the 1-inch pile of documents that you sign when you close on a house. It doesn't have to be that. It can be something really simple. It has nuts and bolts. A lot of people come to us and say, I know I need something. I don't want it to intimidate the customer, but I want it to have a little oomph so that, it can protect me and my business if X, Y, and Z happens. And so, we like working with people to find out about your everyday business, to see how that can incorporate and work for you. If you have a CRM where you put in your leads and your service calls and all these different things. Well, if you send a proposal out, let's say through that system, you can easily attach a 1-2 page short form to where when they accept the proposal, they're accepting those terms and conditions. Boom. They don't even know you presented a legal contract to them and you're rocking and rolling with your business. And so, there's really practical ways. They're not this fancy legal mumbo jumbo, like that's such a thing in the past and what we do is really try to say, okay, from a practical boots on the ground perspective, what can be advantageous, but not be intimidating and not be a hassle, because here's the thing, nature of contractors, you're not interested in being back office people. If you were interested in being loaded down with paperwork, you'd be in a back office. You wouldn't be out in the field. And so I think there also has to be that practical balance of, incorporating easy solutions into your everyday business operations.
Right.
And so, the short form contract, it is so valuable because it's that roadmap.
Where you would start, like if you're going to consult with a person and just say they don't have very many legal documents, they've really never talked to an attorney about what their business needs. We all bounce around on Facebook, talk to each other. What do you have for this? What do you have for that? But if you were consulting with a company, is that one of the first things that you would have for them to use?
I would recommend it. We always say anytime when we're triaging a situation, being reactive, the first thing we say is send me your contract. So if you don't have one to send, that's telling right there of sort of the underlying chaos that might be, behind the curtain when we pull it back. And having that short form contract is just the first step of even a startup business, or if you've been in business 30 years, it's I think people are angry coming off of a pandemic in particular. Customers are trying to get out of that final payment more than ever. And so, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they say, oh, there's a piece of dust there in the corner, and I'm going to withhold that final payment from you or not pay that invoice. I mean, they're really outlandish things people do and say to try to get out of payment. And
right.
So everybody thinks of payment as the kind of the end all be all. And it is definitely most common. But there are other things that come up where they say, well, you didn't do what I expected you to do. Okay. Well, what did that customer expect? What was on that scope of proposal? What was on that service call? And having something that says, this is what we promised to do, this is what you're going to get, is really important. When I say it's a roadmap of expectations. So if we all go get on the road and take our kids to school in the morning or go to work or wherever, and there were not lines on the roadway, we all go those roads frequently to where we can kind of travel in the direction we're supposed to go. But without those lines on the roadway, there's going to be a little bit of inherent chaos.
Right.
There just is. So add those lines to the roadway with a few key things that we can incorporate in a short form contract. Boom, you're done. And it's not something that you have to tend to every day. You do it, you're good to go. Bid jobs, go grow your business. But at least you got that on the front end.
Let me ask you a quick scenario that happens a lot to contractors. You bid a job, and let's just say it's $5,000. You take a deposit, and let's just say it's half, $2,500. There's a balance left, $2,500. But something isn't quite right by the customer, and they decide to pay you less. They decide to say, you know what, I'm going to take off $1,000 because you didn't do it on time or whatever. What is your response to a customer that tries to change a contract like that, or are we going down a rabbit hole right here that needs a whole episode?
We could have a full episode on that, couldn't we, Liz? In the situations that we've seen,
and really, Mark, what you're describing is what we hear almost every day. Those are the calls we get, and that would end up. A lot of those end up in the reactive because often those contractors that are calling us that have only gotten paid $4,000 for their $5,000 job, they don't have a written contract at all. Or they have, a text message where they confirmed the price. Or they pulled a form contract off of one of those internet websites. And I'll tell you, I love those websites because we often end up having to do a lot of cleanup thanks to those websites, because those contracts don't say what people thought they said. And it gives us a lot to do, which is good for our business, not so good for contractors' businesses.
So you're saying basically those contracts, if they really weren't written for you, they have holes all in them. So if you ever try to really use them, it's like Swiss cheese.
Well, yes and no. When we write a contract, we're writing it from the standpoint of our client. And so if we were writing a contract for a particular job, we might use completely different provisions if we were representing the homeowner or the property owner versus if we were representing the contractor, or if we had layers of contractor. If we were representing the GC, we would have different terms that we would want. than if we were representing the sub. So if you just pull something off the internet, you might be pulling something that gives the other party to the contract a lot of really great terms that you wouldn't have wanted if your lawyer had written it for you.
Right. A couple quick questions. I just want to, Alan Rush says, what states are you licensed to work in? Can you write contracts or be retained for consultations outside of Tennessee?
So we are licensed in Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia. Those are the states we can do consultations with or write contracts or other documents for. We can work with folks with local counsel in other states, or we can refer people to folks we trust in other states if we need to.
So you guys are a good first contact no matter what state, and then you might be able to help them or refer them to somebody that you know and trust in their state.
Yes.
Great. There was a funny thing Cody Whitworth said, those websites are their home inspectors, which for us, home inspectors should not be inspecting chimneys. A lot of times they say the wrong thing. And so anyway, thank you for that. So, okay. So proactive versus reactive. I don't mean to interrupt, but continue.
No, you're good. And exactly, you're starting to get into what my next point was, which is, I think it's really important. We don't do divorces. So if you need a divorce, I'm not your person. Can't help you with the first thing with the divorce. But with we know, we like to be that resource of, I love it more than anything. If one of my contractors, calls me and says, hey, this is happening with the customer in this moment. I've stepped to my truck and I've called you. What do I do? Walk me through this. And in that moment, in real time, we can talk through it to where you either walk back in and you do it, or you say certain things to kind of, protect yourself, and then you leave the job. And then, instead of this, oh, this happened 6 months ago.
Right.
It's so much in real time or closer to time. It's so much easier to guide you. And I love this, and Liz knows this, is I love to be involved behind the scenes to where the other side doesn't even know that you have a lawyer as your right-hand man guiding you, ghost writing emails. Love it. And then the client sends the email and BCCs me, and I'm like, yeah, that was a really good email. And the whole time I'm kind of puppeteering behind the scenes. The other side doesn't know the wiser, and you're advancing something forward. And so go ahead, Mark.
Well, so that brings up an interesting point. Sometimes, like when somebody says, hey, I'm going to contact my lawyer, and I'm like, well, great. Well, our conversation is over. Like, if somebody threatens to get their lawyer, should we stop emailing? Or when you think it's going to go litigious, when do you back away and hand it over to somebody like you guys?
I don't think you have to wait. That's really wherever you feel most comfortable, because, you can kind of feel out customers. A lot of people you can tell they're just throwing out that card just to try to get, scare you or get you to back off. But if in doubt, shoot us an email. It's a lot easier in that moment to say, yeah, I think there might be something here, or no, I think this is, a bunch of hot air.
When they say that, though, I guess my question is, should we stop talking? Should we immediately contact you? When they threaten the one side, should we make sure we get legal counsel on our side?
It's not a bad idea, too. And having someone that you're talking to on a regular basis, even if you don't end up bringing a lawyer in that people can see, is sometimes good, because when emotions are hot, we say things that maybe we don't want to have put in writing or say. So there are times when we have emails or text messages that we have to deal with in a lawsuit, or even before lawsuit is filed, but it's definitely gotten that contentious that lawyers are involved, and we have to deal with the equivalent of a yelling match in email. If you have someone proofreading or reading over your shoulder before you send it out, a lot of times we can encourage our clients to tone down what they're saying a little bit better. And it also, we can stop our clients if they're about to say something that's going to create a bigger problem, not just tone wise, but admissions or other issues.
Great. Yeah, that's good. What else on the proactive versus reactive?
Sure. So obviously the short form contract is the way to go. And the reason I recommend that has a really practical application is, not having that, which is your body of your scope, first and foremost, whatever it is. The alternative, which we see too often in this day and age, is even I've got 2 cell phones right here, right? I'm on a device, I've got all these cell phones. So what ends up happening? You get into these text chains with customers. So then when we say, oh, in the reactive side, well, send us everything you got regarding this job and this customer, we get screenshots and text message chains that we then piece together and try to recreate what's happened or what was supposed to happen or promised or who said what, where did things fall through. And I think even judges are kind of used to it in this day and age, but it's so much easier to just have, a single 2-page short form contract. And so instead of, it's easier on you being in the field to where there's like one-stop shop document instead of having to engage in that. And I've got a situation now where I'm helping somebody where it is lots of text messages, more than you would even think. And that's common, but it's a lot cleaner if we do have to file a lawsuit or a small claim or whatever it may be, instead of attaching a large printout of text messages as forming the basis of the contract, we just attach a clean document. It gives that impression of professionalism that I think that perception is reality, unfortunately, a lot of the time. And you give that impression to that customer. It's just different.
Yeah.
If you've got, your logo in the corner, it looks clean and professional. So that's my my biggest advice is your contract. And then reactive.
Quick question about the contract. What kind of expense is a business owner looking at legally to get really the basics set up? What is there a budget or is there a number that people can put their mind around? Like, is this $1,000 thing? Is this a $10,000 thing? Like, what does it really look like for a small contractor to get set up with his contracts and everything?
So we do our contracts on flat fees. And if it's a single contract, then we'll do them for $750 flat fee. If the contractor needs 2 contracts, so maybe one with property owner and then one where they're going to be subbing things out, we do it for $1,200, which is a discount on the second contract. And then we talk from there if we need more than 2.
And these are the contracts. What you're saying is these 2-page contracts. It's just for you. This is basically you're buying an asset. You're buying something that you can use for years. And then once you have these contracts in place, how often should they be updated?
You're going to want to review them every couple of years. And what we'll do before we get going on drafting is talk through what it is that the client wants. So do they want something that has a proposal that looks like a proposal with some terms and conditions? Do they want something that's longer? If we're doing a contract for a full build, a new construction on a full house or building, then those tend to be a longer contract. You're not going to just have a 2-page terms and conditions. But every couple of years, you want to have someone take a peek and just make sure that the laws haven't changed. For example, in Tennessee right now, we can hire subcontractors and include pay when paid or pay if paid provisions in there. So the GC doesn't have to pay the subs until or unless they get paid by the owner. In Tennessee, the legislature has discussed a number of times over the past couple of years whether to make those against the law. And if they did, then obviously you would want to have that taken out so that your contract's still.
I hate that law. I hate when I don't get paid till he gets paid. You hired me. Quick question. I know we're 25 minutes in and we've gotten halfway through subject one and we got 10 of them. Quick question. Can you write a basic scope of work contract that can be recycled to use with other customers? I think that's what you're saying, this 2-page, use it all the time.
Yep. So it would be the same contract. You would just fill in the details, job site, amount, terms of payment, and scope of work. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you before we go too long, can you guys go longer tonight?
We could do whatever you want. I just texted Kristen and said, we're never going to make it through this if we don't move off proactively.
No, you did. I didn't even see it. My numerous devices, they're all muted.
Well, grab a cup of coffee, people. We might be on
cup
here
of
for
water.
a minute. All right. Great.
Yes.
All right. Feel free to stay on that subject or move to the organization part.
Well, I would say also, as to the reactive side, when I talked about, if you have everything kind of clean, concise versus this piecemeal situation, it goes also to, there can be benefits to organization and ease. Not only, we're not, CPAs, but even to have for taxes, to have all your expenses cleanly logged and ascertainable. Project financials, like sometimes disputes happen, not just based off of, hey, I was going to do this job for $5,000, so you need to pay me that, and that type of thing, but with scope that's added or taken away. And so accounting, often there are questions where contractors don't even really know what their project accounting looks like. When I say, okay, so what is the amount? And Liz knows what I'm talking about. I mean, we deal with it every week. When I say, okay, so what is the amount that you're owed? Well, I'm not really sure, that was TBD. Well, I recommend, along with your forms, having some really simple type of change order. It can be this long, where you're at your truck, you handwrite it, fill in the lines. It's got a couple key legal things on it. Present it to the customer, have them initial it. Then you're good. When you say, later on, well, ma'am, you agreed to this $1,200 XYZ. This is where you agreed to it. And that simple form, it pays for itself. You get paid on one job. All these contracts and these expenses that we're talking about pay for themselves.
They're pennies. Or nothing compared to what you can lose on these things.
Oh, yeah. And especially the super crazy customer that just wants to go for the jugular and is filing claims on your insurance, and then they're practically harassing your insurance carrier, and then they just go, crazy. And so with accounting, like my biggest recommendation is for the financials, based off the type of projects you're working on, if there are these additive change orders or deductive change orders, keeping like a master project accounting, even if it's in Excel, that says, okay, plus 1,200. And then as you get your payments, what the total contract price is. So $5,000 plus 1,200, 6,200. So any payments, you're deducting off of that figure. So you're not getting into this, well, I paid for this cleaning, and then I've also paid for this, but this aspect of the scope remains unpaid. Like oftentimes, I think people get in the weeds too much. Yeah. And I recommend kind of taking it more on a bird's eye view, macro view of the project, of saying, okay, this raised the cost, this decreased the cost. So we know over here where it lands, and then these are the payments I've received, to know exactly what that bottom line is of what you're owed as of today.
Is that part of, like, for instance, something's happened a lot to us right now is costs of materials are going up like by the day. So you've put a contract in, you started working, then all of a sudden your bottom line, your material costs get pushed up. Is that in the middle of the project? Like, is that just something the contractors have to eat? Is that something that could be spelled out ahead of time? Like, how does that work, especially right now?
Our typical contract includes for some amount of increase, it just automatically increases the project cost. If it is a certain amount or higher, I mean, the way materials are right now, it far exceeds these percentages. Then the contractor has the option to just cancel it because the cost of materials is just so far above what was expected when they bid it.
So that's in the initial contract with what you're saying. You have that pre-written and say, hey, if this happens, I can cancel.
That's part of our terms and conditions that we encourage folks to include, unless we're representing the owners.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Of course.
So there can be, you can say, hey, I'm going to eat up to 5% cost of, increase of materials. But above 5%, I can either come to the customer and say, you're going to pay this, or you have the right to cancel the contract. And so just as a gauge of it's not like you have to, I know, so many things are 30, 40% higher now. I mean, job after job, that adds up to eating your profit substantially. So it almost becomes a deterrent. And, you encounter things that, you get into a job, you start it, then you realize, hey, I'm really dealing with this. I really need this. What do you do? At least you've got that option. And I think the biggest thing is what we aim to do is just give you options at the end of the day so you don't feel victim to this busy customer or to these circumstances in the industry right now.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, I think I have talked y'all's heads off on proactive versus reactive.
Okay.
Hydrate.
Cody says we also need an addendum that states that we order non-returnable materials and the job is canceled, we need compensation for those items. Like if a lift is delivered and give minutes, and later they cancel that. Like we've put a lift on site and they cancel the job as the lift rolls up and that kind of thing. So I think he's preaching what you guys are preaching as well.
Yes,
exactly. And it also goes, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm going to move topics. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and to that point, Cody, is, I think that's also, we work with contractors of all different trades. And so a painting company, let's say an interior residential painting company, is going to be very different than if you work with chimneys, than if you work with siding or roofing or laying floors. And so we look at the trade and the industry and customize it to like also what type of business do you do? If you're never having to rent that type of equipment, it's a non-issue. So why put something in there, about it? If you do, or the great thing is if your business grows and in 3 years you're doing bigger jobs that calls for certain things, we just revise it so it meets your needs.
Right. Yep. So our next topic was organization of a company.
All right. So we're going to talk, this is a form of being proactive, but is also a really important one, in my opinion. We see a lot of clients who come to us and they're just operating as a DBA. In construction, I think it's crazy to operate as a DBA. That's not a legal opinion. No one quote me on that, but it's not, my husband is a musician who has moved into construction. When he's working as a musician, it's fine. If he wants to go DBA all over the place, that's totally fine. But when he's working with tools, when he's working on people's homes, when something could hurt somebody else really badly, I want a protection that's more than just a DBA.
Well, real quickly, to go back one step, can you explain to everybody what you mean by DBA and
Yes.
what the liability is? Or
Yes. Yeah. I was going there next. So you got me. So a DBA is where you as a contractor have picked a great name that you want to operate as. So Ashbusters, you want to be known as that, but that's all you've done. You've created the name and you are out telling people that you are this company. And that, but really, if they're going to write you a check, they're writing a check to you personally. If they're paying you, if you're doing any contracts, you might have the name that you want to operate as on there, but it's really not a formal legal entity. When we're talking about formal legal entities, we're talking about things like an LLC, a limited liability company, or a corporation. A lot of times we'll hear people talk about S corps. That's a little corporation, basically. But those types of entities give you protection. The reason you form them is because you don't want to be at risk. When you're operating just as an individual or just as a DBA, you've picked a name, but that's it. Everything that you own is at risk. If you get sued and you lose, the person who sued you can take your home. That's as simple as I can make it. If you create an LLC, then they're going to sue your LLC instead. And your LLC doesn't own your home, presumably. And so we create those entities, those businesses, to give a layer of protection for if something goes wrong. No one ever goes into business planning to do a bad job or planning to hurt somebody or planning to have what they build fall down and hurt someone. And that's not anybody's intent. But as lawyers, we're looking at what is your worst case. And your worst case is that you build a wall and it falls on someone and it kills them. And now you're getting sued for wrongful death. So we create these LLCs, S corps. Different states have different types of entities available, but it protects you. But that's not going to be the second biggest issue that we see with folks is when they've got that LLC and that's it. They filed their paperwork with the state and paid their $300 or whatever it costs to form an entity where they are. And that's it. That doesn't do it. It's not an automatic get out of jail free card. Go ahead.
Well, what else does it do? If you file it with the state and you paid your money, what is there else to do on that LLC part?
So if you want to keep that protection, you have to treat that LLC as different from you. So that LLC needs to have its own bank account, not just your bank account. Right. The money the LLC makes has to go into the LLC's bank account. You might get paid by the LLC after that, but you don't want to have your funds mixing up. We often hear folks talk about paying for mortgage or power bill or water bill or food or whatever personal expenses out of their company bank account, because what's different? It's all me, right? Especially if we're if we're the only owners. Problem is that every time they do that, they take away that protection that they paid the state to create.
So commingling of funds back and forth between your personal account, and let's just say your business is low on funds, and you take some money out of your personal account and put it in your bank in your business account. That's a type of commingling. If there's no, this is what I've been told. If there's no like true legal, like a loan, like true documents, and you've loaned, and there's a payment back, and like you said, payments back to yourself, and you bought your daughter, something on your bank, on your personal, on your business, you've now commingled funds. So how would that pierces the shield? So how does that pierce it though? Like, how does somebody come after you if you've done that?
So it shows up if you've gotten sued. If something has happened and your company has been sued and doesn't have the funds available to pay for that judgment, a good lawyer is going to start digging. They're going to start looking into your bank records and see what was going in and what was coming out and how was it getting there? What are the source of the funds and where are the funds going?
Oh,
and
wow.
As soon as they can show that there's that it's not perfectly papered and that you're not keeping that line separate, then you're exposed.
They can go right through that to your money now, to your property.
Exactly,
Wow,
because if you did not treat it as a separate entity, then the law won't treat it as a separate
oh my gosh, that is so good. I mean, that
Um,
is so. I know that this is so common in businesses, and that is really good information.
Now, as an owner, you can loan money to your business, or you can make more capital contributions to your business. There are ways to do it that aren't going to create that exposure. You just really have to be careful and vigilant to do it the right way.
Right.
So there are a couple other ways that you lose that protection. If you don't, it's okay for me to jump in with them.
Oh, please.
Yeah. We often see folks who, when they go and get a credit, when they fill out a credit app at one of their suppliers or vendors, they sign a personal guarantee, which they might have to do to get the credit from the vendor, but now they're going to be personally liable for anything that the business doesn't pay for to that.
Let me ask you about that, because that happens to me a decent amount. They asked me to have a personal guarantee on whatever it was, and I need whatever it is I'm signing for, and I can't get it unless I do a personal guarantee. So is that, what do you do?
Well, those are the business decisions that you make. If it's something that you have to have that you can't get any other way, then you sign the personal guarantee. That's not going to open up everything you own for everybody, but
Okay.
it is going to open up everything you own for who you gave that personal guarantee to.
Yeah.
And one thought, to that point is, if I could jump in, is, when you start a business, you have no business credit. So maybe you have to sign personal guarantees there for a little while, but as you grow your business, build up your business credit, build up your bank account a little bit, your customer base, maybe you can even go to some of these vendors or places asking for a personal guarantee, and you can see if you can go some other route that stays in the business realm that leaves that personal guarantee out of the mix. You never know. I mean, it can't hurt to ask, because they might say no, and then you're just back to square one where you were, and it cost you nothing, 10 seconds of your time.
So your recommendation is, do it if you have to, get out of it if you can, or as soon as you can, if there's another opportunity to get out of it. You don't want that, like you said, it doesn't open you up for everything, like commingling of funds where they just come in and realize, but it still opens you up to that one situation if something goes wrong.
Exactly. And when you do have the financial statements to show that your business is a worthwhile risk, you typically can get the credit without the personal guarantees. Big, huge companies don't have to sign personal guarantees.
Right.
To get those credits.
Well, recently I've been working on a building and a business, and SBA wanted me to personally guarantee the government, and I'm like I couldn't get out of it. But anyway, we didn't do the SBA loan, but it was just, it can happen anytime. So that's great information. Is there other ways that your corporate veil could be? Well, let me ask you before you go. Well, let me ask you. Yeah, go ahead and finish that. But then there was a question: is there a recommended S corp, C corp, LLC? When would you make that distinction?
Those decisions are going to be based on what the particular client wants and needs. So there isn't a preferred for everybody way to go on that. That's going to be depending on the circumstances.
Is that something you should talk to your accountant about? Is that an accountant thing, or who would make that decision?
I typically talk about the differences between the entities, and we pick a structure, the client and I.
Okay.
So then the other aspect of or exception to the entity protection that I wanted to be sure that we raised here is, in some states, Tennessee is one of them, you lose the protection of your entity if you engage in unlicensed contracting. And that could be, we've seen folks who, in Tennessee, we have the contract, the typical GC license, where you need a license if it's 25,000 or over for the project. But in certain counties, you need a home improvement license if you don't have a GC license for everything between 3,000 and 25,000.
Right.
And we see folks who cross county lines and don't realize that there is a licensing requirement in the bigger counties. And if they get sued for a project they did in one of those counties and they don't have a license, then all of a sudden, all that work you did, all the separation of all your bank accounts, all the money you paid to the state, it was all for naught because you have defeated your entity protections.
I did not know that. That's really good information. Okay, now we're depressed. Now the next thing.
You want a little tool for your toolbox? It's practical that I even told my spouse when he formed his company was from the get-go, get in the habit of, anytime, even if it's at Lowe's and you're buying something for 5 cents, get in the habit of signing your name. John Smith, PRES, period, president, to show that you're signing in your official capacity. Like, get in the habit of anything business, throw some designation after your name, because that means, hey, I'm signing in my professional capacity instead of my personal. Like, sooner you can get in.
I learned that a few years ago. Somebody told me to always sign my name and president as you're doing anything in your for your business. That's a great.
If you're at the bank.
There are some states where if you don't, it is assumed you are signing in your individual capacity.
Yes.
So it's not just, is it up in the air, but there are some states where the statute says, if you didn't say you're signing as an agent of a company, you signed it as an individual.
So good. Quick comment from Chad Murray. He says, I find it funny that more business owners don't seek this advice. Business owners often say, I'll take the risk until the risk comes to reality. Yes.
I agree, Chad.
That is true.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
So true. All right. So do we want to move to the next topic?
I'm game
for it.
Licensing.
Yes. So Liz touched on, unlicensed contracting, and it's really a situation where, at least in Tennessee, states vary, but if you do it, there's really not that much, hey, my bad, I didn't know, forgive me, because, and we'll get to this a little bit greater later, is, it's a violation of the Tennessee Consumer Protection Act. So you're not just dealing with the Contractors Licensing Board. You've got these other layers of things that are coming in there. But one thing that I actually enjoy doing is defending contractors before the licensing board. It's a different approach than dealing with a customer. There's a little bit of finesse to it. And I think that you have to be aware of where you need to be brutally honest with the board and how you go about it. And there's a lot of fact finding that I do to dig into the layers, because I don't want to know just what you're telling me happened. I want to or how something appears. I want to know the nitty gritty of what actually happened. Who committed the robbery, who is running out of the store, in what direction, and were you really there? Were you really not there? Right. I don't want any impressions of, I don't care, we're not judging. I got to know the truth and the nitty gritty. And so I think that having that trust with clients in that relationship too, if this comes up, that bad apple customer that we were talking about before, you do 99 jobs perfectly great, get paid, you move on to the next one. And then there's that one lady that you just can't do anything right in her eyes. You can't make her happy. She complains about 5 different things. You'll never get paid. Right. What's she going to do? She's going to start Googling some stuff. She's going to come across the licensing complaint link on the internet. You might get a complaint against you. So here you are owed 30 grand or whatever from a big job. $5,000, $1,000. I've seen it, run the spectrum. But then it turns into, okay, you're trying to get paid. she's trying to say that there's a defect or inadequacy with the work. Then you get a licensing complaint filed against you. That in Tennessee, you got to answer within 30 days. So it's not, let me throw this in the back seat of my truck. It's something to keep in the forefront of your mind. And as soon as you get one, you know, send us an email, throw it our way. Let us see what's going on. And so there are layers to that I think that a lot of people don't know what to do if that happens, because it's scary. And it's like, hey, I've been working 30 years and I've never had this happen. Well, you've never had it happen until it does.
That's right.
And it doesn't mean that there's merit to anything that's been alleged. You may have done everything perfectly, but just the nature of that customer is going to make it difficult for you.
Yeah, I had it happen to us where I had just we let it lapse, like there wasn't a payment or the payment didn't go through, and we just had to make the payment. And a guy said, "Hey, you're not licensed." I'm like, "I'm licensed. I've been licensed forever." And sure enough, my accounting department didn't see it, didn't send it in, and then we sent it in. But yeah, it was kind of scary at first because just what you're saying, there's a complaint against me, and I hate that. Especially you're trying to do everything you can do, and there's always one more dang thing that you don't know about, you know?
And you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. I don't know heart surgery. I don't know how to do divorces, right? I know construction law. So, you know, and knowing what you don't know is, you know, maybe there's whatever complaint or situation it is, maybe there's a point of law that we're aware of. You may not be, but we are, that shuts it down instantly. Squash it, boom, done. Move on, you know, really quickly. And it doesn't have to be this big thing. So the whole, like, let me not consult a lawyer, don't consult a divorce attorney about a licensing complaint.
Yeah.
Probably not going to end well.
Right.
So I think that just, again, it goes back to just being a resource at the end of the day.
Yeah, very good. I like the next topic, hidden crimes in construction. What are we talking about?
All right. So this truly is a topic that we could go a whole hour on. In fact,
I'm having you guys back, so I just got news for you.
I have given a presentation on this topic that has lasted an hour, but I'm going to give you the 5-minute or maybe 10-minute version of it, which is that there are ways that you can commit crimes when doing construction and not even know about it. The easiest way is to do work and not be licensed. I checked, I know Tennessee's hidden crimes pretty well. I checked a couple other states, and every state I looked at, if you did work and you were unlicensed, you not only are potentially open to some kind of fine with the licensing board or have created more civil liability for yourself if something went wrong, but you may have also committed a crime. The crimes are going to be different in each state. So the licensing one's super easy example, but a couple of other examples from Tennessee that people don't know about. If in Tennessee, you have to give a notice to owner before you do work on residential property. I hear all the time from folks, no, you don't. There's no notice to owner requirement in Tennessee. That is false. And not only is it false, but if you did not send that notice to owner the way you needed to, and then you try and pursue your lien rights in Tennessee, you just committed a crime. So paperwork is really important. In Kentucky, if your contract doesn't comply with the Truth in Construction Act, then you committed a crime. In Tennessee, on bigger projects, if you're holding retainage for one of your subs and the project is a certain size or more, if you don't use an escrow account, you committed a crime.
Wow.
So it's pretty amazing where they're hidden. And that's why we call it hidden crimes, because they're tucked into things like the lien statute or the retainage statute. They're not just found in the criminal law. and they're going to go from state to state. So the biggest thing that I want to tell everybody that we're talking to today is to know where those crimes are hidden in your state. Wherever you are typically doing construction, know where those crimes are so that you don't commit them. And then the other thing that I want to be sure we mention is if you are crossing state lines, make sure you talk to an attorney before you work in other states. That one gets people a lot when they come to Tennessee from other states, because we have some pretty strict requirements in areas like retainage where people don't realize that it's different. I've had people tell me, well, we did it this way because the bank made us do it. Well, that's great, but you still broke the law. We did it this way because this is how we always do it. That's great, but you still broke the law. And those crimes, you might not get prosecuted for them, but if you're a repeat offender and there are other complaints against you, I wouldn't feel safe just saying, yeah, you'll never be prosecuted. So that's our very brief hidden crimes.
Yeah, but yeah, Jay Walker says enlightening. So that's Jay is a long time chimney guy and been in business a long time. So if we're enlightening Jay Walker, we're enlightening a lot of people. Great stuff. Thank you. That was, yeah, I'm going to have you back. I'm sorry. It's just, you're going to have to come back. What
Are
is
you saying it's not the typical lawyer? Wah, wah, wah.
No, it's not.
Not us.
Well, especially since you know construction so well and you deal with this every day. You know, a lot of lawyer talk is kind of just general, be afraid of everything. So you're telling us exactly what to be afraid of. All right, you had TCPA, and I hope I wrote that down right. Is that right?
You did. It stands for the Tennessee Consumer Protection Act. So
okay.
States vary, and most of them are going to have their own Consumer Protection Act, which outlines rules and regulations that people in business have to follow to protect the consumer. And we as residents of a particular state get to enjoy those benefits. But in business, there are a lot of things that are requested and required of us that we don't know. And it goes back to, you don't know what you don't know. And the unlicensed contracting, Tennessee has a very strong, compared to other states that I've seen, a strong Consumer Protection Act. And so there are a lot of things in their provisions that apply to contractors that you may not know. A common thing is, okay, are you deceiving a customer? If you have, vinyl letters on the side of your truck that says licensed and bonded, well, sometimes that customer is going to take licensed and bonded, not as that you have a business license. So let's say you don't have to have any particular type of trade or contractor's license, licensed and bonded, so you have a business license. Well, let's say in Tennessee, in one of these 9 counties that require the home improvement license, the customer may take it as you have that type of home improvement license. So what information are you actually conveying? And could that be perceived as deceiving the customer? So licensed and bonded is something to be aware of how you present that to the customer. If you do not have a general contractor's license, be careful that you are clear in your communications that the customer doesn't take it that way. Because then
something. What if I'm a contractor and I know another contractor is not licensed but doing the work? What are we to do as contractors when we know somebody else is fraudulently, acting like they're licensed and they're not?
Liz, you're looking like you're wanting to talk.
I think the licensing board is really going to be your best place to go for that. Because you don't want to start smearing people on the internet or, exposing yourself to problems. And if you go talk to customers and you get in the way of them having contracts, then you are exposing yourself to liability as well there. So really, for that situation, if you are inclined to do something about it, then the licensing board is the place to go.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, sometimes you think you want to tell the customer, hey, that guy you're using isn't licensed, but you're saying that's a bad That's a bad idea. Go all the way up the chain.
Yeah, in Tennessee and again in other states where I have looked, Alabama is one. I know that you can be sued for interfering with other people's contracts or with their potential contracts. So if you do something that causes a potential customer to not work with someone, you might end up getting sued over it, and you don't want that. And with some of those types of claims, as well as with the TCPA, you end up exposing yourself not just to whatever actual damages there are, but treble damages, triple the damages, plus attorney's fees. Our Consumer Protection Act is one of the few areas where the legislature has said the winner can get attorney's fees from the other side. And so going back to the Consumer Protection Act type claims, if you get sued under that claim, your exposure is far greater than just what might have gone wrong on the project.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
And so it's just good to kind of be educated on the nuts and bolts of your particular Consumer Protection Act to make sure, okay, what are the provisions that apply to you and navigating accordingly. So that you don't have these bombs dropped on you in the reactive stage of,
Right.
man, the worst thing is the woulda, shoulda, coulda. And that is something we try to, stay away from. So, it kind of, you can see how all this kind of intertwines of sometimes just a easy, inexpensive, and relatively quick conversation with us. We can say, here are the high points. This is what you need to be aware of. And we need to equip you in this way.
It reminds me of us in the chimney business. We're like, why did the homeowner not, use us to inspect the chimney? Why did the homeowner use, something on YouTube? Or why did the homeowner go online and try to, and here we are, a lot of us contractors didn't use the lawyers to we complain about this, yet we're exposed and we are going to YouTube, we're going to Facebook pages and try to get answers, or we're talking to our buddy and we don't talk to the lawyers about this and spend some money and get yourself covered. I mean, it's just so amazing. And so, great stuff. There's some questions, but actually I'm going to get to them later. Let's move to insurance.
All right. Again, can talk for hours on insurance. Insurance is not really the most exciting topic out there, which, I think much of what we do is pretty exciting, but I realize that not everybody chose to be a lawyer.
I can talk chimney draft and smoke chambers. I mean, you guys will love it.
Exactly. So the thing to know about insurance, in 3 sentences, is that it is also not a get out of jail free card. Just because you have a CGL policy, that does not mean that if something goes wrong, you've got protection. If you get sued, this is where we see it the most. Someone sues our client for alleged defective construction, claims that something that our client did was not done well or right. If they're just complaining about our client's work, then there's no coverage under the policy. There's not going to be a lawyer provided by the insurance company, and any judgment is not going to be paid by your insurance policy. Anytime you get sued, though, I will say, or anytime you think you might get sued, it is always a good idea to provide that lawsuit to your insurer through your broker in case there is coverage. Because if you can get your insurance policy to pay your lawyer's fees, then your insurance policy just paid for itself. But if it's just saying that your work was bad and nothing else was hurt, there's not going to be any coverage. If you have taken on additional liability through indemnification provisions or other contractual liability that you would not otherwise be responsible for, that's going to be excluded by your policy. If the work is completed under certain circumstances, that's not going to be covered by your insurance policy. And so what we like to encourage folks, especially if you are handed a contract by an owner or by a GC, make sure that you check with your broker to be sure that whatever insurance provisions are in there actually are in your insurance policy and actually are covered, because you could end up contracting yourself right out of coverage.
One of the things I've noticed that's going up a lot is they want a big umbrella policy and that's an expensive policy for us to make this whole thing. And then they want to be named as additional insured. And I know we're not here to talk about insurance, but you're right about making sure you're covered for. Sometimes we work on a big commercial property that's worth tens of millions of dollars, and our policy is only, a couple million.
And if you're working on a big commercial project like that, there are going to be provisions in your contract about insurance specifically. Right. And so those contracts, before you put pen to paper, make sure that your broker reads them, doesn't just say, yeah, of course you have coverage, but actually reads those provisions and confirms that you're covered.
So you're saying before we sign a contract with a general contractor or one of those big, thick things we have to go through, we should send that to our insurance broker?
Yes.
And your newfound construction lawyer dream team to potentially redline those disasters that you're walking into, those bomb zones with the landmines that you don't know before you sign John Smith.
And that is a great point, because a lot of times those contracts get put in front of you as though they are final. You cannot change them. And that's not true. A lot of times you can change them. You can't change every single sentence of them, but a lot of times you can go back to them and say, I'm not going to agree to these sections.
And I've done that. And it's surprisingly how much those walls can push. Like even on some insurance coverage, I'm like, I'm not going to buy that extra policy that you're asking for. And he's like, okay, you don't need it. Like literally it was like that easy sometimes.
Yes. Yep. And so, again, having someone you can call on the front end, we do that all the time, where folks will bring us the contract and say, hey, can you just take a peek at this? And we'll just flag a couple of things, here are the things to be aware of. And we can change them and you can go back with an alternative proposal, or at least know what is it that I'm signing before you sign it and make the judgment call on whether it's a good business decision for you.
Here's a little insight into our industry. What's happening to our industry is we all start off as chimney sweeps, or not all of us, but a lot of us did. And we literally did, sweeping of the chimney. But what's happened in the last 20, 30 years is we've become specialty construction companies. And we've completely changed. All of our jobs are going up and up and up. And it used to be, I'd never do a $10,000 job like a couple times a year. Now we do them a couple times a week sometimes. And our scope of work, we do $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 of work. And we never did that in the past. And so in our industry, we're behind a little bit on that because we are becoming construction companies. And so your information is so good. I did want to ask you about insurance, and one of the places that most companies get into trouble and we get sued on, or something comes back on us, is our inspections. Our inspections of chimneys are one of the least payment things that we do. But it's also where our most liability is. And if we miss something or having errors and omissions in our insurance policy, can you talk about how liable are we for missing some construction defect? I don't know. That's probably too long of a topic, but can you shed any light on that specific thing in our industry?
So what I would suggest on that one is you're going to want to have some pretty clear language in your contract that says what you are going to be responsible for and what you're not going to be responsible for.
Correct.
In most of the states, The courts say that parties can contract for whatever it is that they want unless it breaks the law. And so even if it seems unfair after the fact, if you have a contract where both parties agreed to it, you can agree to anything. And what I would encourage folks to do who are doing those kinds of inspections is to have a very clear contract that says these are the things that are not included and these are the things we're not responsible for. If you have, going back to the home inspectors of the earlier comment, if you take a look at what their contracts say, they only basically look at whatever it is that they can see when they stand in the room and look around. And their contract says that is all we do. If there's furniture in the way, if there's, if we can't get to something easily, if we can't make something work just by flicking a switch, that's all we had to do. And that's what their contract says. So that's the answer at the end of the day. And so if they've missed something and it's huge, they don't have any liability.
It's all about those contracts, that 2-pager, huh?
It really is. And I would suggest you want a different contract for those inspections than you want for some of the other jobs that you're doing.
So good. I've got one more thing, which is war stories. And then Chad Murray asked some questions that you didn't cover. Do you have time to stick around? I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're 12 minutes over or so.
We're all good.
Okay, so good. All right, so let's tell us some more stories.
Yes. So obviously, you know, by now we're passionate about being proactive, but the reactive side is, we're real life janitors, cleaning up situations, filing lawsuits, defending lawsuits, cleaning up the licensing board or whatever it may be. And because we do that side of the work of handling and leading litigation as well, we take, whatever has occurred, gone wrong, crazy things happen on job sites that you just can't foresee, and incorporate those things. Wow, we really need to prevent X, Y, and Z. Let us go to our clients that we work with all the time. And like at the beginning of the pandemic, there were aspects about PPE and, distance on job sites and things that we heard started in other parts of the country that trickled. So we take whatever we see happening and prevent it on the front end. And crazy things like, I didn't know it was possible for multiple layers of subcontractors on one project to all have fake certificates of insurance. Don't recommend doing that. But let's say, you've hired some folks, what are things that you can look out for? Because if everybody else has no coverage and they are forged certificates of insurance, then the one guy that has the policy or that has the deeper pockets, the longer standing business, the more successful business, then who's getting sued at the end of the day? The guy with no coverage, no money, or the person with the deeper pockets with potential coverage. Right. And you would never think on one job site that there may be, a person in insurance pocketing premiums, leaving you naked, or these forged COIs. So things to look out for. Again, this is just my experiences looking at this stuff. Different fonts. So if the workers' comp line looks different than the CGL line, beware. If the policy effective dates from, say, your CGL differ greatly from your workers' comp.
Hold on. Go back to the fonts thing. What do you mean beware? Beware of what?
So let's say you've got your CGL looks like Times New Roman. Right. And then your workers' comp, I could whip out many right now and say, look at this, but I can't because of confidentiality. And then your workers' comp line is a different font. It means somebody has gone in there in Adobe and edit that PDF and gone in and typed something else.
Oh, gotcha.
And so also let's say your CGL effective dates are May of 2021 through May of 2022. Well, you're probably not going to have a workers' comp that is really off center from where that CGL is. And so these are just things to kind of look for. And also, exactly, you touched on it earlier as being a named certificate holder. Make sure that if you are requiring your company name to be in that box, that your true legal name is in that box and your correct address. It sounds simple, but you don't want potential coverage to go to the guy whose name was similar, but not actually your company. Like, you want that protection to be triggered for you. And then also looking at the date of when that certificate of insurance was issued, on the top right. And then lastly, there is a pretty substantial disclaimer where the insurance broker or agent signs that issues certificates of insurance. And it basically says this paper doesn't mean anything more than what it's written on. And you're saying, how is that possible? They say if this policy is canceled or whatever, it is our option to notify you. It's our option to notify the certificate holder. So what if you're mid-project, you have a sub that's giving you this document, you're relying on this 12 months of coverage to cover the project length that you're dealing with. What if halfway through the project, their policy lapses? Maybe they forgot to put their premiums on auto pay, or maybe they had a situation in the family or something that distracted them. Like, things happen that aren't intentional. Right. And then coverage lapses. So that's why it's also important, going back to that 2-pager, is to put in there, they've got to have coverage for the whole length of the project. And it's their responsibility to make sure that they have it, so that if something happens, you're protected from that wrongdoing or that omission. Mm-hmm. So yeah, fonts on certificates of insurance. And then Liz touched on this. It's just because there is insurance doesn't mean that there's a payout. It doesn't mean there's coverage. It doesn't mean that defective work isn't going to get a payout at the end of the day, right. Because you're charged with doing the work the right way. And also, filing a claim on insurance doesn't mean a payout. That's why some of these crazy customers, they whip out from, where you supplied your COI to them, and they start blowing up your insurance company's phone. Right. So there's kind of that false sense of, it's tricky. You say, hey, I pay my premiums, XYZ goes wrong, that should be covered. And that's why it's important to not rely wholly on that and have these other, protections in your back pocket of just doing things a smart way. Because in my opinion, more often than not, there is no insurance trigger. There is no insurance coverage from stuff that I've seen.
Yeah, good. Yeah. The Dave Levitt says, thanks for all the scares, Mark. LOL, but no, seriously, we all really need to know these things. And I had a little echo on your mic, Liz. I had to mute you, but I think one thing that I'm getting from this is I tend to use attorneys when I need them, and I don't use them, proactively enough. And so I think you talked about feeling good about having good insurance. I think you also feel real good about having a good lawyer team that sets you up really well in business. To Dave's point, there is a scare, but now, there's two things in business. There's being ignorant and there's being stupid. Ignorant is you didn't know. Stupid is and didn't do anything about it. So let's not be stupid. We might have been ignorant till these ladies gave us some good information, which they did, but now it's in our court. I do want to ask you a couple things. One question. Hey, Mark, I have a friend who owns a chimney company in Rhode Island who inspected and swept in September, chimney fire in December, and were held liable, ? Is that something you can even comment on? The guy, so in our world, September, they must have used the fireplace a bunch, and then it caught on fire months later after the service. Is that a topic we want to talk about, or is that too not enough information?
Probably not enough information. And that would be a pretty fast. If it was this past December, it'd be pretty fast to be held liable. But always keep in mind, just like we say about prosecutors and the grand jury being able to indict a ham sandwich, be aware that anybody in the U.S. can sue for pretty well anything. It doesn't mean that that's going to win at the end of the day, but it is the good and the bad about our legal system. It's open to everybody so that you can go and have your claims heard, but it also means it's open to everybody and they will have their claims heard. And in most states, everybody pays their own way. So everybody pays their own legal fees.
I'm going to ask you guys a couple more questions and I'll let you go. So quick, this may not be quick, but Chad says that came in late. Do you cover subcontractor payroll laws and overtime, or did we cover subcontractor payroll laws and overtime laws?
We did not, but that's also a great topic. Also one I've presented on because especially in the construction world, because we use the term contractor and subcontractor, people seem to think that means we don't have employees, we have independent contractors, and that is not necessarily the case. And so folks end up in the construction world misclassifying their employees even temporarily, and then exposing themselves to huge liability, huge fines, huge penalties. And that is an entire topic on its own, which we'd be happy to cover.
Oh, you're going to. I've got news for you. You're my new buds. Let me just a quick question. When does an employee or when does a subcontractor become an employee? Like, what are the quick things that all of a sudden, hey, this needs to be an employee?
It really depends on the relationship. It's not a timing thing. It is a relationship thing. So the examples that sort of scared me, and they were my scary stories to frighten people, were companies taking, a few years back, companies taking folks down to do hurricane repairs. And they may have just grabbed up folks that they had worked with occasionally in whatever state they were in and went down to where there was hurricane damage. As soon as they took those folks down there and those folks were only working for them at the locations that they had said, they were considered employees by the Department of Labor. So it's very fact specific. Every state has its own rules and the federal government has its own rules. So it's an exciting topic to cover and definitely a long topic.
So good. All right. I'm going to show this. Guys and ladies that are watching, here is their basic contact information, Kristen or Liz at counterpointlaw.com. And then I do have a screen that kind of shows, let me just make sure I've got this up. Chrome tab, contact info, share. This is their, I'm going to leave this up for a second. If you want to take a screenshot with your phone or you want to reach out to them, like they said, they do handle these states that are listed here, but they can help you in any state and get you a good lawyer that can help you. So, oh my gosh, ladies.
Help spot issues. You know, we might not know what how a particular state will handle things, but we at least have a good idea of what things to look for. So if folks want to reach out for their states, we can talk through a couple of things and send them in the right direction.
So good. As Chad Murray says, have me on when they do employee law show, please. I think Chad has some stories that are some knowledge that we all might want to know. So, gosh, so good. Anything else before we let you guys off the hook here?
The one thing that I would say that we didn't say early on, but we've said many times, in the past is that Kristen and I really love having a partnership with our clients so that we can be talking about things. We can be strategically looking at different aspects of our clients' businesses and helping through the legal side of things so that our clients can do the things that they love. Because we know that while we might think that the law is fun and exciting and lots of there's great stuff to talk about, we realize that our clients love what they do and not the legal aspects of it. So let us be your strategic partners and let us help you build your business in a safe, legal way.
I do want to ask you one last question. Jim said this, and I've heard this before. I want to get your opinion. So he says, I'll just put it up here. He says, sometimes I think insurance attracts lawsuits. How eager is an attorney going to be to file a lawsuit when you find out they don't have insurance? All they can get is some worn out brushes and a beat up truck. What do you think? Like, there's been topics of like, hey, I'm not going to have insurance because there's nothing to get. Or if I have a big insurance policy, they're going to come after me. What do you think about that?
So in Tennessee, you can't force someone to tell you anything about their insurance. And it doesn't come in any lawsuits. It's not something that you can ask for in discovery. And so it's really an issue that we talk about when it comes up, but it's not one that comes up right from the start. Mm-hmm. I have had clients where I've been able to reach out and say, hey, there's no insurance. You need to find another tree to bark up. Doesn't always work, especially if you're working with residential construction. If you've got homeowners, they're emotional. And whether or not you have insurance does not deter them from wanting to ruin your life because they feel that you've ruined theirs. So that's how I would answer that question.
Yeah, so good. All right, ladies, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you for having us.
I'm going to ask you to come back. So there's already some other topics for you. So thank you so much.
Great.
Be ready.
Oh my gosh. That was, I loved it and hated it. I have most of these coverages, but when they were talking about certain things, I'm like, oh, I better check on that. Oh, I better figure this out. And, they graciously gave us their time. So if you need an attorney, please reach out to them. They are very, very knowledgeable and just a benefit to all of us. So, all right, guys, I hope you enjoyed our SureFire Live. Come to see us next week, same time, and we will talk about some more good stuff that will help you. Talk to you later.